focusing on the supply and demand fundamentals, right? I think I caught that first part. Understanding the
Mhm.
nuances.
The key to investing in uranium is very similar to investing in any mineral commodities and resources. And it's really focusing on the supply and demand fundamentals. And it's one of the things that I like about the resource industries. You can actually look at the demand for whether it's copper, gold, uranium. You can also look into the mine production and the secondary sources of supply and really come up with a thoughtful forecast of where a commodity is heading. Uranium is probably in one of the most ideal situations right now in that, we went through a very difficult period after Fukushima, which impacted both supply and demand. On the demand side, we saw Germany move away from nuclear power. We saw Japan shut down reactors and now slowly restarting them. But something amazing has happened since those times where this whole drive to carbon-free, clean energy has really favored nuclear power in a way that I haven't seen in my career. And so we're seeing growth in nuclear power at about 2.5%, 3% annual growth. We've had 58 reactors come online around the world in the last 8 years. Now a new generation of small modular and advanced reactors like Bill Gates is building in Wyoming, really, really hitting this growth story for nuclear energy today. And then on the supply side, because we went through a difficult market with low uranium prices, uranium production has lagged uranium consumption globally by about 60 million pounds a year. We use about 190 million pounds of uranium to generate electricity in nuclear power plants around the world. Production's been coming in well below that for the last 4 or 5 years. So we have a commodity squeeze going on right now, and some other developments in the near-term market where we've seen speculative investments like the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust coming in and buying upwards of $3.4 billion of uranium off the open market. If you're old enough to remember the bunker hunt and their attempt to corner the silver market, well, this is a much more deeper pockets attempt to really not uranium market, but really provide investment in the physical uranium commodity. And that is in turn driving wonderful returns in the uranium equity. So we have just an all-around great story in the uranium thesis, right?
Excellent. So focusing on the supply and demand fundamentals, right? I think I caught that first part. Understanding the nuances of where the need is and where the market's going, and investing perhaps with folks like yourself who are doing this on a very intimate, focused level, I think is so far what I've gleaned from that. Now, why is it? I mean, and maybe it's not, but it seems like something like this is not as well known to, let's say, the average investor or the real estate investor or the entrepreneur business owner. Perhaps person is not as familiar or as comfortable in the stock market. Like, could you kind of just talk a little bit about how uranium and what you guys are doing and how it fits into perhaps a good balanced portfolio?
Yeah, well, I think uranium is probably the biggest untold story around, in that in the United States today we get 20% of our electricity from nuclear power, but it is a full 55% of our carbon-free energy. That's twice the contribution of wind and solar. And we've always known benefits of nuclear energy and its resilience. For example, nuclear energy is as clean in terms of emissions as wind and solar. It's as safe as wind and solar, which is surprising. But if you look at the hard data over the last 60 years, nuclear energy is perhaps the safest form of energy generation. Where we differ from the renewables is that we produce energy 95% of the time. Renewables only run at best 25 to 35% of the time. So you're going to have to figure as a society how you're going to get that other 70% of your energy supplies. And if policymakers are making it very difficult on oil and gas and coal, we really have few options to turn to. And that's what we're seeing is nuclear energy is really into the headlines. It helps COP26, the big climate change conference in Glasgow, where the climate change community is almost in a collective coming to the realization that they've been doing this 26 years and basically have nothing to show for it in terms of carbon emissions. I think worldwide coal use will be at a level around the world. So when people look at nuclear power in that light, in that context, resilient 24/7 power really is becoming more widely, and now investors, whether they're retail investors or institutions, and especially those investing in clean energy, sustainable investments, ESG investments, nuclear is now becoming very quickly accepted alongside investments in wind, solar, and battery type investments. And that's a very new situation, I would say, just in the last 5 years, that nuclear has been considered clean and sustainable, even though the facts have been, it's always been. So I think we're seeing a lot of investor interest, and both institutional and retail coming into the space these days.
Wow, those are some staggering stats. 50% of all of carbon-free energy is coming from, it sounds like, nuclear power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're only using it's only 20% of the total amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in other words, if we can exponentially increase that 20% to say even 30 or 40 or 50 or 60,
Yeah.
we're going to see leaps and bounds of exponential carbon-free energy. Is that a fair summary so far on that piece?
Absolutely, and we're now seeing a next generation of small modular reactors, and these are not the 1,600 megawatt massive reactors that are going up around the world. These are the 100, 200 megawatt reactors that can be built in factories, shipped on site. If people are familiar with the nuclear navy or aircraft carriers and submarines, they all run on small modular reactors and have done so safely since the 1950s. Well, now those are being sited in places like Idaho or Wyoming, or in the UK, where Rolls-Royce is rolling out 16 small modular reactors throughout the UK as a scalable clean energy way to provide electricity to their grid. So again, the growth is not just the reactors that are already operating in the United States or even under construction around the world. Another 51 are under construction presently. We're seeing this next generation, and if you need to get some more information on that, look at what Bill Gates is doing with TerraPower in the state of Wyoming, where Warren Buffett's electric utility company is buying one of these modular reactors to replace a coal-fired power plant in southwestern Wyoming near Kemmerer. A great example of how this energy transition can be done in a positive way, because the impact, this is a very traumatic transition to a greener energy economy, and no one ever said being green is easy, and it's not. And if we though can replace some of those lost coal-fired jobs in the nuclear energy and uranium industry in Wyoming, that's a better solution than just saying, well, they can make solar panels or make windmills, which frankly are all made in other countries like China. So we have a great story to tell. The uranium market is undersupplied because of the low prices, which have now only begun to increase. We've reached 9-year highs in the uranium market, again, spurred on by some of the speculative investment in the commodity itself by Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, and the need for utilities. Electric utility companies have been quite complacent about low uranium prices and haven't been contracting. These would be companies like Duke Power, Exelon, Entergy, Dominion, that may be your local power company that has a nuclear power plant. They've been quite content to buy cheap uranium off of the spot and near-term market, but a new cycle is emerging where they're going to have to sign new long-term contracts. And the challenge is that there hasn't been a lot of incentive for uranium mining companies to get that capacity positioned and in place to meet the demand. So again, advice on investing in uranium is look for those companies that have the resources in good jurisdictions, that have the management teams that know how to mine and develop uranium, and have the customer relationships and get these mines into production with uranium prices that are really on the move as we speak.